From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello, I'm Nikesh Ragani and welcome to Stumped. I'm joined by Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney and Jaru Sharma is in Chennai for Akashvani. The inaugural European T20 Premier League, also known as the ETPL, kicks off next week. It features 6 franchise-based city teams across 3 countries in the Netherlands, Ireland and Scotland. The first few games are being played in the Netherlands before the competition moves to Malahide in Dublin for the bulk of the tournament. It's hoped the new league can grow the game across Europe. And there are some big names involved as well, the likes of Aussie great Steve Waugh, who co-owns the Amsterdam Flames, with Indian legend Rahul Dravid co-owning the Dublin Guardians. Well, I've been speaking to another legend of the game, Jonty Rhodes, who is one of the owners of the Rotterdam Dockers, and I asked him how all of this came about.
I spent 2.5 years living in Sweden during the pandemic, 2020, and coached the Swedish national team for 2 seasons there. So, you know, I've had a first-hand experience, obviously Scandinavia, slightly lower level than the rest of the European cricket, but a lot of the passion, the same passion that all of us have for cricket is actually spread everywhere. And I know it's quite difficult to believe that there are, cricket facilities and infrastructure and players and clubs in Europe, but I've been quite closely associated with Dutch cricket for quite a while. Obviously, there's a strong connect between South Africa and the Netherlands from a historical point of view. But we also get a lot of their sort of club players coming to South Africa in our summer, their winter, and vice versa. So, I've been somebody who's followed European cricket pretty closely, especially since my time in Sweden. And it's also an opportunity where, I've kind of retired from playing, retired from coaching cricket even, and now from an ownership perspective, this is pretty much the last frontier when it comes to setting up franchise cricket at this sort of league level. It's not just a couple of businessmen who've got involved and said, okay, let's start our own cricket because we're passionate about the game. Irish Cricket Board are 20% stakeholders in the actual league itself. This is supported by Ireland, Scotland, and the Netherlands Cricket Board. So it's a very strong, basis to work from. And I think the most important thing is that there's a lot that I can give back to European cricket. And to be honest, I haven't done a great deal with the sort of legacy that I have in making a difference in people's lives through cricket around the world.
During your time playing, for example, Kenya was a country that was up and coming and talked about as potentially having test status in the future, the way they performed in the 2003 World Cup and the years around that. It didn't quite happen. The investment didn't quite come. In terms of European cricket, you mentioned Ireland there, obviously now a test nation, Scotland very much, in the mix for trying to qualify for tournaments and things like that. How important do you think it is for those countries and other European countries, I guess, to continue to get that investment? And if they do, how exciting is the future of European cricket?
Well, I think, the sad thing from a Kenyan perspective, and we've seen it in, associate cricket at various times in different zones. From an administration point of view, there's often a bit of a failure in various systems, and it does impact the players tremendously. And because 2003 Cricket World Cup, my last game was against Kenya. I broke my finger and then I was out the tournament. But I had worked with them, as a fielding coach just around that sort of period, and there were some great players. So it was very frustrating. And I think what we see in Europe, though, because there is already such established cricket sort of background, the infrastructure is good already. And I think that's an important part. We've seen what's happened with the major league in the US, but there's obviously a big diaspora. Not many Americans themselves have traditionally are playing cricket, but the infrastructure is starting slowly but surely. But now in Europe, we already have a strong infrastructure. You already have strong cricket boards that have, really good pedigree and really good reputations in cricket. So it's all about how do we add value to the cricket boards, the work that they're currently doing. And I think a big part for me too is not coming in and saying this is the way you have to play cricket. Cricket in Europe is different, but how can we add value to that by, increasing the pool, increasing the platform, and giving the players access to good coaches, international stars to play with. It's a very short window period, And then how do we extend that beyond the ETPL? You know, can we do camps in Europe? Can we bring them to South Africa and to India? Because we've got a strong, the Rotterdam Dockers, we've got a strong India, South Africa, and obviously European sort of link in our setup, in our franchise.
Tell us more about your team then. How's it looking? Tell us about some of the big name players that you've managed to sign.
Well, right from the sort of outset, we were adamant that, because Steve Waugh had the first three teams that were signed up, Steve Waugh had a very strong Australian flavour. Kyle Mills and Nathan McCullum had focused on a more New Zealand-based team. Glenn Maxwell had been announced also with quite a strong Aussie flavour. So we went Southern Africa, and also kind of the feel for us was about, okay, so firstly let's get Faf du Plessis. I mean, as a circuit player, you know, he's playing full time in leagues around the world, and he's really led incredibly well with the bat in the field. And then Heinrich Klaassen. So two of those names for us were myself and Maduka Sri, who we were sort of the founders of the club. We signed those two up with equity, and for us it was important because we knew someone like Faf. You know, he's played around the world. He knows a lot of the players in the circuit. He's also got maybe 2 seasons left in him. I don't know how many. I mean, he's stayed really fit throughout his career. But there's an opportunity that he can grow into the franchise in different directions. He doesn't have to then just be, because you see a lot of the times when the guys finish their franchise cricket, they then become a mentor. They kind of hang around. You know, he's got various options to stay involved with the franchise as a co-owner. So Faf and Heinrich Klaassen, Heinrich Nokia as well. We've got some real pace, which is always useful in T20 cricket. Because we were looking into the Southern Africa, we've signed up David Wiese from Namibia, and that for us is, you know, it's kind of our experience, because you want experienced players. You're together for 5 weeks. You kind of hit the ground running. Classy is coming straight from London today. I think he's finally got his visa, and he's heading across to Rotterdam this evening. Faf is arriving now. So I think from that point of view, we wanted that South African connect. Adrian Burrell is the head coach, and you know, he's South African. He's had great success in the SA20, and he obviously had a strong. He and Faf, between the two of them, had a strong sort of say. In fact, I've had no say whatsoever, which is staying in my lane as a co-owner when it came to selecting the players that they were looking at to balance the team.
I mean, this ownership luck, it seems pretty easy, doesn't it? If you can get players like that in, you just call up one of your mates, and then he'll call up some of his mates, and there you go. You've got a really strong core, and it must be exciting though, the fact that you've managed to attract such big names to this new league. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Well, I think also what helped out was Steve Waugh with the Amsterdam Flames, and that's our first game on the 26th of August. It's going to be the derby, Rotterdam versus Amsterdam. But, you know, they'd signed up Steve Smith, Mitch Marsh. I mean, Tim David, they had some really big names, T20 names. And I think for the rest of the players, Glenn Maxwell and the other setup who was playing, for the guys that we approached, obviously the backing of the cricket boards was a key element, because you've had a few leagues that have come up and disappeared just as quickly. And the people that get left in the lurch, it's always been the players from a payment point of view. So having the backing of the cricket boards, the 3 cricket boards, was essential. So it wasn't just us convincing Faf. It was them looking at, you know, the teams that had already been announced, and then being able to show them, hey, we've got some serious players, not just on the field, but in the actual running of the event, which was such a core part of the guys agreeing. Because there's obviously so much franchise cricket around the world, they do make a choice. They've just finished the 100. CPL has just started. So now how do we draw people into the first, the inaugural season? We have to show that there's backing, because there has been attempts before to get the ETPL off the ground. And now we've got real backing, from a structure in the ownership of the league itself. And that made it a lot easier to convince the players to come.
Now, obviously, it's one of a number of short-form tournaments that takes place around this time of the year. And throughout the whole year, really, there's so many franchise competitions popping up around the world, T20 and obviously the 100 that we've had in England recently. Is short form, in your view, the future of cricket? Are we going to see other formats perhaps lose popularity, die out?
Well, it's interesting because we get asked that question a lot. And I mean, I was involved in South Africa working for Standard Bank when I retired, and we launched the Pro 20. And a lot of people were saying, how, Jonty, you're a former test player, and you just introduced this game to South Africa, and then we hosted the World Cup in 2007, the first T20 World Cup, which India came and won with a very young side. And everyone had said, you're going to destroy Test cricket. And it was at that stage, I just said, I don't think Test cricket's going to be in trouble. Maybe 50 over cricket down the line. Because this was really at the sort of nascent stage of T20 cricket. It wasn't even a full T20 international. It was almost like a friendly game. So, way back in 2004 was when we launched that. So 22 years down the line, my concern was always for 50 over cricket. So I still think that the best players in the world want to play Test cricket because it is the ultimate test. It's called Test cricket for a reason. So, obviously the stronger Australia, India, England support-wise, those tests I think will always do really well. But then other nations who are struggling to find support through sponsorship. South African cricket hardly plays any Test cricket. I mean, it's crazy. They were world Test champions, and I think they had 5 or 6 Test matches in the whole year. So I think there's definitely financial considerations around that, but the players still want to play Test cricket. So I think bilateral series. If we look at football, huge focus on World Cups. So a similar thing will be happening possibly with 50 over cricket when it's a World Cup year. You'll have, whereas I think that the sort of focus on bilateral 50 over series is going to be less and less and less. But I think Test cricket it's never going to disappear. It's still something that the players want to play and do well at.
Yeah, certainly fingers crossed that that stays strong and we can spread the popularity to more than just England, Australia and India. Just back to the ETPL itself, it must be great also, not just for yourself to have a go at owning a team and see, cricket from a completely different perspective. But the fact that you've got some big Bollywood names like Abhishek Bachchan involved as well, I mean, that must be massive in promoting that league over in South Asia too. Yeah,
and we've, he's obviously one of the owners of the league. We've got John Abraham, who's a huge Bollywood star in as a co-owner. So he has equity in our team. He's also a keen a lover of sport. I mean, he owns a football team, Northeast United, in the ISL, Indian Soccer League, and he's got a motor racing. He's a kind of stunt guy that does his own stunts. So he's into things that are fast and furious, and it's awesome to have him involved too. So he's really passionate about sport. And also, the interesting thing was that obviously cricket in India dominates everything, and he's somebody he's focused on sports that beyond the cricket's limelight, and again the same thing, not taking it into Europe, but supporting cricket in Europe for him kind of fitted into his ethos when it came to how he gets involved in sport. But he's really excited to be a part of this. He can't wait to come out and watch a couple of games if it fits in with his shooting schedule. But it's in India they keep talking about Bollywood and cricket, but there's a third, kind of the ABC. There's astrology, Bollywood and cricket. And we've got, 2 of those have combined for this ETPL. So we'll be looking at the stars and just checking that the Rotterdam Dockers are right in there for a win.
I was going to say, you've got an astrologer as part of your coaching staff as well, just to,
always,
give you some tips important. Before the game.
Yeah, always very important.
Of course, yeah, definitely in India. And finally, just in terms of the league itself, obviously it's new. Everybody's just kind of finding their feet. We'll see how this first season goes. What would success look like maybe in 5 years' time for this league?
The key for us is the standard of cricket. So we're looking to ensure that the 5 international or the 5 local players are playing exceptionally good cricket. And I think success for us doesn't have to be 2 more teams are introduced or 3 more teams, 1 from each country. Success for us is just what is the pool like for us in Rotterdam, in Netherlands cricket, in Ireland cricket, and in Scottish cricket. How are they performing now? The younger players that are coming through and rubbing shoulders in the ETPL, how are they performing on an international stage? Because I think that's going to be the telling part, is that we're here to make an impact on those 3 cricket boards. And then how do we start? We have Italian passport players in our ETPL team, the Rotterdam Dockers team. So teams like Italy who kind of burst onto the scene and were massive underdogs, and everybody loved the way they played. And in India in the recent T20 World Cup, how are we impacting the young players coming through? And that'll be for us as franchise owners to keep a sharp eye out on. And for us, it's a big part of what my role within the team. So nothing when it comes to the game itself, unless they need hand hitting catches, I'm going to be far removed from the dugout. But when in the off season, whether it's out of the tournament in South Africa and India and even in Europe, focusing on developing the talent that is there. We know it is there, but spending time with them at high performance camps. So I think that'll be a big thing for us. What is the pool looking like in 5 years' time? I mean, is it still this small group of players, or are we bringing in? I was a football, hockey, tennis, cricket player, and there are so many similarities and parallels between all those sports. And Europe is full of football, hockey, tennis, golfers. That can we start converting people who are looking at the game and going, well, it's strange, but bringing them down and understanding that there are lots of similarities between all the sports that are already been played in Europe, and growing that cricket pool of the pool of cricket players in Europe.
Of course. I just wanted to touch on one thing, though. You say you're going to sit back, but you've got the great Jonty Rhodes as your owner. You're a young player from Europe. Are you telling me that if somebody asks you for some batting tips or certainly fielding tips, I mean, that's what you're most known as. Obviously, you're a wonderful batter, but your fielding was outstanding. Are you telling me you're just going to say, well, no, it's not my job. You go and speak to your coaches. Surely you're going to pass on some of that knowledge.
Well, I mean, we have obviously Adrian Burrell, who's head coach, and I'm not going to be sending the guys to him for fielding lessons for sure. I've known Adrian for a really long time. But Heino Kuhn is, he's been in the Netherlands for ages. He's a wicket keeper batter. So coaching wise, and fielding is about movement. So I would definitely pass it through him first before I give anybody advice, because the last thing you want is competing or conflicting information going into young players. More than happy to sit down with the coaches and the players, or with permission from the coaching staff themselves. I mean, I'd love to. It's pretty simple, really, fielding-wise. People make it complicated. And if somebody needs some advice and we're doing it through the correct channels, then, I'm not going to hide away. But I know my place. If I'm asked and it's come through the right channels, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm there for.
Well, enjoy yourself and best of luck for this competition. Take care.
Really appreciate it.
That was Jonty Rhodes speaking to me on Stumped a little earlier about the new European T20 Premier League, which starts next week. Jim, just listening to what Jonty had to say there, there's a lot of Aussie interest, of course, in this league. Steve Waugh, Glenn Maxwell in as owners and administrators, as well as some big-name players. What does this league have to do to make cricket truly sustainable and successful in Europe, do you think?
Well, it's got to be watched. I don't know how many people they're going to get at the grounds. Is there any television or streaming coverage of the matches? In Australia, can I watch it if I want to? I'm just wondering how they're set up to give it profile, because one of the issues you have in playing cricket in places that aren't automatically traditionally cricket playing nations. I mean, all these places play football. Is getting people where they feel that they've got some skin in the game. So I'm not sure financially how successful it can be unless it's set up in a way that it's going to grab the audience that's very much, in terms of watching sport, on the periphery of what they're about. But then I don't know all the intricacies of this. It sounds fascinating, and I suppose it's only good for the game. But most of the franchises we see around the place have got a bit of inside running, particularly in the West Indies, even in America. But Charo might be more of a global expert on these matters. What do you reckon, Charo? Is there an audience for this and the places they're playing?
It's all about standards, really, Jim, because when on television or whatever other devices people watch their cricket on, you can watch the best in the world, the second best and the third best. Would somebody spare the time, because there's so much cricket going on around the world, would you be able to spare the time to watch something that maybe, and I mean no disrespect, say 12th in the world? So it's going to take time for people to believe that the standard of the ETPL is something that perhaps equals the bigger leagues in the world. And everything takes a bit of time, so patience is the key as well. What are the metrics that the ETPL are going to judge themselves on? It's very important for the European nations to be playing such a tournament, but you can't hurry viewership around the world. It will just take time. News will filter that somebody played a really good knock, or there was this bowler that they didn't hear of that did a really good job. And that's how viewership's going to develop. So patience is really the key. And I hope that the ETPL, people who are organizing it, those who are involved, are not getting a little ahead of themselves in terms of expectations. Because as long as the expectations are realistic, the league will do well in its own set of commercial circles. And that is the key, really, because standard is great for viewing, but the health of the league, everything has to do with the commercials. And I hope that everybody is patient in that score as well.
If we come back in 5 years' time, I'm going to ask both of you this. We'll start with you, Charu. In 5 years' time, what would you like the ETPL to have achieved for you to call it a success?
More teams from Europe. If they are able to expand because they've been commercially reasonably well off, I have no doubt that the standard's going to be okay because there are some good players in the nations that are currently competing. If they can get some other countries, Jim mentioned Italy, I don't know, Portugal, with our new friend there, or France or Germany or any of these new countries, because they are not essentially poverty-stricken countries. So whatever little needs to go into the making of a team, I'm sure they will find local resources. And of course, players, maybe some players from other countries, but, the diaspora players. But if the tournament can expand, say within 3 to 5 years, we know that they're on to a good thing. And if they're unable to do that, if they're struggling, if there's any report about, should I put it delicately, as financial sort of, impropriety, then we're going to see a struggle. And I do know that there are some Indian actors involved, so they'll get their own share of social media attention. That doesn't translate to viewing the tournament, which is very different. And I have no doubt that there'll be lots of Indian ownership money pumped into the ETPL as well. But this is how it's going around the world. But to translate that into a successful viewership number, that's just going to take time. I think I've said that before. I'm repeating myself. Patience is the key, and expansion is the other marker of a league doing well.
Jim, would you agree with that?
Yes, it's far more a game of patience, as I said, than in established countries. But if you're going to have a crack, this is the way to go about it. But it will, unfortunately, at the end or the beginning of the gamble, become a financial exercise somewhere along the line, because these blokes ain't going to play for nothing. And there's got to be a revenue coming from somewhere. And if I guess if it's not coming out of television or some benefaction from a millionaire down the road who wants to have an involvement, I don't know how. I don't know how it'll be viable beyond a couple of good years. But let's see. I'm looking forward to seeing what occurs.
That's it for this week's Stumped with me, Nikesh Rughani. Thanks to Jim Maxwell and Charu Sharma. Join us again next time.